Good day, everybody, and welcome to this Tech webinar on reimagining insurance claims for performance and growth. This will be presented by Stefan Lambrecht. Stefan is an expert in decision automation, process automation, and case automation with a really large baggage of expertise and knowledge. This is a very exciting presentation, a deep dive into the technology. This is not necessarily a second part, but a follow-up to a previous webinar that you can find online at trizetech.com. And now we're going to go into the details of this. Stefan, the floor is all yours.
Okay, thank you, Denis, for the introduction, and welcome to everybody. So what I would like to take you through during this webinar is, in fact, the journey that you can make as a modeler of decisions or decision logic, process logic, case management logic, etc., using the TrizetTech platform. And what I'm going to show you today is how these different models, and essentially the decision model, which is at the center of everything, how it can help us to set up and configure an entire environment which allows us to handle claims end-to-end and based always on a decision model that is at the center and that serves, in fact, as the control tower for the entire claim handling operation. And the role I'm going to play during this webinar is, in fact, the role of a modeler, a business modeler from the business side. And I'm going to use decision models, I'm going to use process models, I'm going to use case models in order to set up this entire environment. And it will not only produce models that explain how things are being done, but they are really working models. We can deploy them to engines, and these engines, they can then be used by IT to connect it to forms and to systems, etc. So now I'm going to move away from the slideware and we're going into the environment. So what you're seeing here is an end-to-end representation of how claim handling in the insurance world is really working. And at the center, what you're seeing is a decision task, which refers to a decision model that will pilot the handling of a claim from the start until the end, and that will also dictate, based on the situation or the status that is reached in the claim handling, what are the next actions to be taken, either by human agents or by system agents or by AI agents, if you want, etc. So let's dive into it. So what you see here is, at the center, we have the information about the insurance claim. That is, in fact, a representation of all the information and data that we have available about a specific claim. This will then be assessed fully by, and every time the claim information changes, that will be repeated. It will be assessed by a decision engine, and the decision engine will then determine whether one of these, whether there needs to be done one or other action in one of the domains of the claim handling, for instance, eligibility checks, etc. So let's...
Stefan, this is very interesting. So basically what you're saying is that anytime information about the claim change, there's a decision that is made, and the decision then distribute the work around to whatever workers that are available. Some of these workers could even be agents that do the work. So that's very interesting. So this is a very decision-centric orchestration where the beating heart is the DMN decision.
Yeah, And the power of it is that the decision logic will do obviously as much as possible straight through processing and automated processing, but will decide based on the logic you implement when a human agent needs to intervene, and then one of these stages and processes will be kicked off. Let's dive into the decision model itself. And as you will see, the decision model at the highest level, I'll let it pop up first, has more or less the same structure as the case model that we just saw. And why is that? Because every time information in the insurance claim is changing, whatever type of information, this decision model will be kicked off, and it will do or it will apply logic to evaluate if the eligibility of the claim is okay, if the objects that had damage and that led to this claim can be accepted as such, and also with the damage that they had, what compensation should be given for these damages, then also the delivery of that compensation, which could be a payment, but also a repair or replacement of damaged goods. Obviously, in claim handling, there is also what's important: if another party or third party is liable for the claim, then an insurance company will also try to recover the costs that they had here from that third party. And in the end, they will close the claim, which means that they still have to do some financial or accountancy transactions, etc. And then the decision engine here at the center will say, okay, now we've got everything is fine, and we can close the claim.
So what you're showing us now, that's a DRD, a decision requirement diagram, yes, isn't it, in DMN? Yeah. So DMN is a decision modeling and notation, which is a standard for capturing how decision can be made, both the requirement, as you show us there, and also the logic. Now, by doing it this way, you're making sure that you have a deterministic decision that is made. This is not hallucination. This is actual determination in a deterministic way based on your own insurance company policies and rules and contracts that are in place. Okay.
Yes, it is in fact the implementation of your insurance company's policies and regulations they want to put in place. And that is in fact done within all these underlying decision logics or decision services that we will see. And I'm going to dive into one of them, which is the eligibility checks that need to take place. So if we talk about eligibility of a claim, in fact, and that is usually the first thing that an insurance company will check whenever an insurance claim comes in, that is checking whether they can find an insurance contract for the customer that hands in the claim, check whether the contract that is referring to the claim or that is connected to the claim is still valid, whether the object, for instance, a car, is present in the contract, and whether the coverage period is still valid. For instance, if I go into here, we will see that also later in this presentation. I can here go into the logic for that. And in fact, what we will see is we have, and that is also the power of decision models or DMN, that is that most of it is, most of the logic is expressed as decision tables, and they explain very well what is at stake here. For instance, here, if we have a contract that we could identify, then we have two possibilities. Either the peril date, that is the date on which the accident in this case took place, is within the boundaries of the coverage period, or it is not. If it is not, then we don't have a valid, the coverage period is not valid, and that would mean that we would not compensate the claim. Yeah.
So in this decision table, really, each row is a rule that you capture the rule that apply in the context. And that makes things very visual and easy to understand and maintain as well.
Yeah. And what we do here, for instance, we determine whether everything is okay, and then you would have a valid status, or you don't have a valid status. And what we will also, and we do that for every aspect of the claim handling, we also want to explain to either a human agent that is involved or to a customer, etc., why, for instance, something is not valid. And this message outside insurance coverage period is a message that you would get if there is no validity. And we will also give some explanation why it is not valid. So, for instance, here we will explain in the details that the peril date is this one, and the start and end date of the coverage period is that one. And then if you build, for instance, a user interface in a form, then you could display, okay, your claim is outside the insurance coverage period, and this is the reason why it is. And if everything is valid, okay, you don't really need to further elaborate on it.
So that provides you with completely explainable logic to your end user and customers. So this is not just black box type of decision. This is something you can make very, very transparent.
Yeah. And I can also immediately not only document it and show it here as a model, but I can also execute it. So at whatever level of my decision model, I can fully see what, if I test it, if it's working okay. And I'm going to show it.
Before you go there, Stefan, I just want to clarify, maybe for some people that are not used to DMN, the decision model annotation, what you're showing us now, this is a decision service that you created, and in the top half of the box is what is exposed to the consumer, but in the lower level, you have all the different work that is kind of hidden. So you can decide what you make available and exposed and what you keep internal to what you're doing.
Yeah, indeed. This one, the result of this will be exposed, and you will also see it. And in fact, this is the input that is needed. And what I'm starting off at whatever level, and that's the way I built this kind of decision models, that is, I always pass the entire information about the claim and then pick out the data that we would need. So what I'm going to show you is how you could test this. And here you see you get a form that you could fill in. Yeah. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a small shortcut here. I prepared some test scenarios. And here I've got a test scenario about a coverage period check. And I put in that scenario, and we will see it later also, to see what happens if the coverage period is not okay. So let's...
So you're doing this within the test environment to make sure that all the logic that you model is as you would expect.
Yeah. And what you will see here, I need to... sorry, I'm going to do it again. So that's fine. That now I can submit it. Yeah, and I see what you see here already, and that is good when you're modeling decision logic. If everything turns green, that means that there is no problem with the functioning of the logic. Yeah, and here I see the result, and I see a result which gives us information okay, there is missing information. Missing information, why? Because in the logic at this level, we have specified that if the coverage period is not okay, that we want a human agent looking at it instead of taking an automatic decision that we will refuse the claim. That is part of the policy of let's say, a customer-friendly policy of an insurance company to have a look at it before turning down the claim at all. So, because here we see there is a reason list, that's what I showed in the logic. It says outside the insurance coverage period. Here we have a summary. That is a summary that is exposed from this node. But here we have per decision node here, I've got the result. So for instance, for the coverage period validity, that is where we saw the decision table. I've got as a result status not valid. The reason is it is outside the insurance coverage period. And why is that? Because the peril date here is indeed after the end date of the coverage period. So this is the information based upon which that decision was now taken. And now it is up to, when we bring that back to the process, up to a human agent to really look at it, see if it is really a problem, or perhaps there can be a backlog in insurance contract administration, and perhaps the contract was renewed in the meantime, but the data was not up to date yet, and then we can see what we do with it. Yeah.
And then on the right side, I see that we have the information dots there that gives you the partial results for each of the subparts. Yeah. So you have full traceability of where all these different results come from. So if something is not as expected, you know where you didn't get the result you expected.
Yeah, and you can also go into it, and that is also very nice. Here I can also see, so here I see my logic, and I see also which row of the decision table has been hit by the scenario that I have just run through it. And here I then see, okay, here I've got determination of the start dates and end dates, and here I've got the status not valid. Why? Because there was a contract, but the peril date wasn't in between the start and end date of the coverage period, and that led to not valid. It led also to the reason outside insurance coverage period, and these are the details that are just an explanation that we also expose to a user interface, for instance. Yeah.
So full traceability, full auditability for how this particular decision was made.
Yeah. And so what we do, in fact, here we start from a helicopter view of the entire insurance claim assessment. It falls into different functional domains: eligibility checks, acceptance checks, compensation determination, and so on. And it calls each time a sub decision service. And you can just build it up bottom up, but you can also do it top down. In fact, the modeling environment leaves that up to you. And I just hang in there these different decision services. And what you see here is I'm calling, in fact, the decision service at a lower level, and I pass the data of the insurance claim to that decision service. And I do that for acceptance, for claim compensation, etc., etc. And then we get to the end. So
centrally from that nucleus point, your decision at the center is calling these different decision service and bring it back to compose your final decisions.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what we did previously was only testing this one, but with the same input, I can really show you how a full assessment is made. And I'm going to pick another scenario here. A scenario that is, let's say, practically straight through processing of a claim. So not with a coverage period problem. So what we do there is we say, okay, I'm going to take this one. It's an automotive claim. I'm going to submit it. And okay, it fully ran. And what you will see here is a full overview, in fact, of that insurance claim document. So what I do here is I give a summary of all the input that has been given about the insurance claim. So a claim ID, also when we did the assessment, who has been the claimant, what is the peril. It was an accident that took place here around the corner where I live. And these are the circumstances of a collision between two cars. The insurance claim statement information is here. It is linked to an automotive insurance. There has been a contract linked to that. All the contract information is also available here. All the insured objects within the contract are here. So this is my car. This is the identification of my car, etc. These are the coverages that apply within the contract to my car. So I have an all-risk car insurance. I've got property damage liability when I run into another car, etc. With the start dates and end dates. Then for the claim itself, it indicates, okay, my car was involved in the accident, but this is the counterparty's car involved in the accident. So that comes from the insurance claim statement. So we have all the information here about the accident that took place, where it took place, what are the parties involved, what are the objects involved, which objects have been damaged by this incident, etc. And then based on the decision model that I just showed you, we get for every aspect, we get a result. So for instance, for the eligibility, in this case, we have an eligible situation because we found a contract, it was valid, the coverage period was okay, the car was included in the contract, etc. So this part of the claim handling is completed and is completed in a positive way, so it is eligible. And here you find all the information of the eligibility. Then the second part is the acceptance. And also here we've got a positive or a happy flow, because also that one is completed based on the information that I just mentioned. The status is, it is accepted. Accepted meaning that, the incident or the accident is clear and that the damages have been accepted for my car in terms of all risk insurance, for the counterparty in terms of property damage liability. It has also been determined by the logic that the counterparty is liable for the accident based on the information about the collision. So this went well. Then we have also compensation determined, that has also been completed for the car, and then we have that information, and then we go into compensation delivery, and there we see, oh, here we need to do something, because here I don't have completed but an enabled handling status, and so someone will need to issue the payment in this case. And also for the recovery, we will need some human action also here to determine how we will recover, and the closing cannot be started yet. So in fact,
this provides you a complete view, a snapshot of the current status of that claim file.
Yeah.
And from there, then you can spark different activities outside. And this information is all structured. So now you were showing us kind of a structure of the information, but this could be displayed and rendered in any interface of any insurance provider, whether it's their mobile app or whether it's their website or whichever way they want to render it is. Even providing it as information to some chatbot or agent that's interacting with the customer. Okay.
Indeed. And that is, in fact, the only thing that needs to happen, because if we have the decision model on the one hand, and I'm going back to this, we include it in process or case handling logic, then we have everything to make it work without, in fact, the backbone contains all the functionality, all the logic, etc., both for taking the decision, determining what next action needs to take place, etc. Also, the process logic, etc., is determined through the models that we have here, because what is going to happen, we had that problem with the coverage period at the beginning. In fact, that conclusion is taken by our decision engine. And what we will see is, in fact, whenever something needs to happen by, for instance, a human agent in terms of eligibility checks, the decision model will ask, in fact, the case logic here to initiate an action within eligibility. And
so that's where you have all the orchestration. So now you showed us how the decision, which is the beating heart of the claim, makes a decision and then says, hey, you have to enable these different stages. And then you're showing us those enabled lines you showed up earlier will trigger these different stage of activities around it.
Yeah, because in the case of the problem with our coverage period, for instance, the handling status, which is determined by our decision engine, is set to enabled. And here in the if part of this entry criterion for a manual eligibility intervention, we say, okay, whenever the decision engine sets this to enabled, it will kick off, in fact, a sub process or case handling, which will then, if we have missing information, because that is also an outcome of the decision engine, will trigger, in fact, this process. And this process is a BPMN process in which a user, and a user will be the claim handler, will need to take some manual action. And if that is successful, then it will return back the information of handling that manual action. And then again, our decision model will assess the outcome of what comes out of this process and will assess, okay, is it okay now? Or if, for instance, the outcome is no, it is not eligible, well, then it will probably close and terminate the insurance claim handling here.
So we have that continuous orchestration around the decision of different activities and elements. And if you can go back to that BPMN model, I think something interesting to note is that you see that task there that's marked as a user task. Within the TriZetech platform now, we have the capability of this being either a human user or an AI user.
Yeah.
So you can specify an agent, an AI agent as the performer. So depending to where you want to take this automation, you can go all the way to AI taking over at certain point or human taking over, but always within the same contract or the same deterministic way of doing things. So there's no dreaming up and hallucination going on. This is completely scaffolded to make sure that the policies and the regulations are adhered and done depending on what level of automation you want to go.
Yeah, indeed. Obviously, everything we have seen up to now, the decision model, the case model, or the case logic, the process logic, it's all depending on data. And obviously, that is also a part of setting up this kind of models. That is making the link to, what are the concepts we're working with, and what is the underlying data that we have been handling, because we saw quite a lot of data in that overview. And also that is linked together in a very nice way. Here, for instance, what we see is we have an insurance claim here. Well, if I click on this, it opens another model, which is in fact our glossary of all terms and knowledge we have about insurance claim handling. And here you see, in fact, definitions of eligibility, what we just saw in the decision logic and how it should work. And what I see here also, we saw that when we were looking at the decision model. If I click on this, I see, in fact, the definition of all of these data elements that are linked to eligibility. And here we see
you have both the meaning of that term, eligibility, within your organization, and you also have the data structure that captures the information about that eligibility.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. And for that data, we also have a model that is also very interesting, and that is the overview, the central data object, which in fact contains all the data about the insurance claim, has this structure. And in fact, what it contains is two things. The yellow part we see here is all the input data that we receive and about everything. So I can further click it through and I can say, okay, for instance, for apparel, we have that kind of information here.
So you're using, so this is the new standard from the object management group called SDMN, the shared data and model notation. So all your logical data structure are captured there, no matter how it is physically stored in Excel sheets or database or data lakes or whatever, but you have that centralized logical view of the data.
Yeah, indeed. And we have that on the input side. And in fact, whenever the DMN or the decision logic takes decisions or conclusions on eligibility, acceptance, etc., that is the green part. That is what we saw as an outcome of the decision logic. And in fact, what we have here is one central object, which is the insurance claim, containing all input and all output data that exists throughout the life cycle and the handling of an insurance claim. Okay. And
so from this singular view, you have both everything that was provided about that claims at any time and all the different decisions that were taken based on that data environment.
Yeah, indeed. And what I'm going to show now to round it all up is, in fact, I made a simplified version to show you how the entire claim handling can take place based upon a DMN or a decision model that is really controlling everything. So this is a simplified version.
If you allow me for a second, we have a question from Winton. Winton is asking, what notation did you use for the data structure? The shared data model and notation.
Yeah, it's the SDMN model that we used. Yeah.
So when Winton, SDMN, the shared data model and notation, is a new standard from the object management group, which is the same standard development organization that created BPMN, DMN, and CMMN. They added SDMN for the data logic structure.
Yeah, and it allows, in fact, to not have, because previously you had decision models, process models, case models, and they all had their own data structures behind them. And in fact, SDMN makes it shared amongst these different models. So my data structure for the insurance claim. I can use it in the case management logic, in the process logic, but also in the decision logic. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a common data structure that you can use anywhere in your models.
Yeah. What I'm going to show here, we're going to execute, in fact, the claim handling itself. So as we would expose it to an IT environment. So what I have been doing here, I'm not an IT developer at all. I have been modeling case logic, process logic, decision logic. And what we are going to do here is to show that it also works in an IT environment as the backbone for systems on the internet or whatever, mobile apps, etc., that can use it. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I've got here my my model. So we will start with an insurance claim. We will take the example of that coverage period that is not okay. It will run through the DMN. It's the same decision model that we saw at the beginning of the presentation. Then it will kick off this stage, which is a part of the life cycle of the claim handling, based on, in fact, the fact that the DMN model has said that we need to enable that human handling part. Then we will get into the eligibility stage, and this BPMN process, which we saw earlier, will then be kicked off, and the user will need to do something, and then it will all be ended in terms of eligibility. So what I'm going to do,
I noticed that this is not the complete model you showed us earlier. So you're focusing on a smaller part so that we don't get overwhelmed with too much happening at the same time.
Yes. It will work for the entire thing, but for the sake of this presentation and the clarity of it, I just stripped it down to some essential parts. So what we are going to do is we are going to deploy our models, and that is the case model, process model, decision model, etc. They're all deployed to an engine. And that is done now.
So now you're leaving the definitional and modeling environment where you define your logic and you test it all in there, and you're deploying this logic as a service, a REST service that can be consumed.
Yeah, because you can obviously call it then from whatever system, and that is explained here in this API. In this API section. But we can also try it out. So what I could do is I could just fill out the form, and that is the same data structure as we saw previously when we were explaining the decision model, etc. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to pick up my filled out scenario to kick it off. The one with the coverage period check. I will kick it off. And in fact, what happens now is it has this input. And then the first thing that needs to happen is that the DMN model is executed. So if I go back, I'm going to make this work. So, and once the DMN model has run, and we can see the result here in the case data, then I'm going to go down here to the eligibility part. What the DMN model comes up with is a handling status enabled. So that will, in fact, kick off this stage. And on the other hand, it says the status is missing information, and that will kick off this process. So if I'm going to...
And what you're showing us there, that interface, that's just a demo rig interface that was created. Normally, this would show up in the, like we mentioned earlier, into the application of the insurer or the mobile application or the web application.
Yeah.
And the layout would be different, but it would be the same information that is
Yeah.
fed in there.
Yes, indeed. So I'm going to kick that off, and then I see that the engine wants to kick off a process which is identify insurance contract. That is our BPMN process. And if I kick that off, or if the engine kicks that off, then it will present a task called link claim and claim object to valid insurance contract. That is this task. Yeah. And so you must imagine that this could pop up in a task list in a claim handling application. Mm-hmm. And if I click on it, then this would be some kind of form then in that claim handling application. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look at this information. And I found, for instance, a contract renewal, and let's say that we extend the coverage period to the 31st of December. We do the same thing here, and in fact,
so now that's the human.
That's a human intervention.
That's saying the information you have in the claim about the contract is incorrect. The termination date should be this new date.
Yeah, so I corrected the contract information, and then I make a human decision that this claim is eligible. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to confirm that. So that means that this process has ended. If we look now at the information about the case here that we have, then we see that we have eligibility, but what it will now do is the case will in fact rerun our decision model. And if we look at it now, then it will tell us that let's see if we go to the eligibility, that the status has changed to eligible. That was done by the human, but based on that information and the changed contract information, the engine has now confirmed this and has confirmed that as far as the engine is concerned, the eligibility part of the claim handling is completed. Yeah. And so then it can continue with acceptance and all the other parts and so on. So this, in fact, demonstrates that in the back end of the system here, based on the engines that we have modeled and without any IT development or coding to be done, that we have a fully functional working environment that supports end-to-end the entire claim handling. Okay.
So the beating heart is the decision, the case and processes do the orchestration around the decision, and all this is headless and can be displayed in whatever application you have or whatever front end you have. And here you're just using this demo rig to so we can see what's going on in the background.
Yeah. And in fact, once you have modeled this and tested it and simulated it, you can hand it over to IT and say, okay, plug it into whatever application you're building, and it will work. Yeah. So
what about if my organization, I'm an insurance company, and we have a different series of steps. We follow different decisions. We are based on our own. Like every organization have their own decisions and how they decide things, how they move these things along. Can that be done, or is this?
Well, that is the power. That's a big power of this approach. That is that everything we have seen in the models, both the decision logic, the case logic, the process logic, also the data that we use, can just be adapted on the fly and can be accommodated to whatever logic you want to implement within your organization. In fact, this framework gives you let's say, a jump start that will accommodate for claim handling. It can be automotive or other claim handling. It gives you a basic template, let's say, but a working template also, and you can adapt it in whatever way possible, and it can be done very, very quickly.
So the framework gives me the 80-20, well, not even the 80-20, it gives me the 95-5 of what I need. I can then just go adjust my rules, adjust my particular policies, adjust to our particular processes internally, do these adjustments, test them, validate them, and then deploy it, and I'm ready to go.
That is indeed true. And that is, in fact, what I call ERP 4.0, something you could not do with traditional ERP systems, because if you had to change the logic in it or whatever, it did cost a lot of money, took a long time, it was very complicated. And this is, in fact, the opposite.
Yeah, so you can go change an element of logic, redeploy it, and instantly now it's behaving the new way according to the new policy maybe, or the new regulation that came out, and can just adjust the behavior of the whole thing.
Indeed. All right.
So, Stefan, have you reached the end of what you
Yes.
today?
We also reached the end of our timing, I think.
Timing.
Yeah.
So, Stefan, thank you very much for this deep dive into the model and execution of this logic. This is a very powerful framework that is very easy to understand by subject matter expert and business expert in the insurance world. So it gives them something they can understand and modify, and then it can be deployed into an IT infrastructure of the organization and consumed there for more efficiency. Any final last word you want to give to our audience before we close up?
No, I would say if you're interested or have any questions or so, don't hesitate to contact us, and we'll be glad to discuss everything with you.
Well, thank you, Stefan. Thank you, everyone. There's no question that seems to be left into the stream, but if you do have a question, I invite you to pop it in there quickly, and we'll reply to you via email as soon as possible. As mentioned in the beginning, the recording and the slides will be available in the next few days on the TriZetech website. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.